Good day, everyone. Welcome to your self-help podcast. I'm your host, Joshua Melissus, and joining me today is Bobby Lewis, who is an amazing documentary filmmaker, as well as an inspirational Missouri State University professor. Bobby, thank you so much for being here.
Oh man, thank you, Josh, for having me, and I appreciate the praise there, your vote of confidence on making films and whatnot.
Now, you have a reputation in the film department for being a very positive person, and I was wondering, how did you get that way? Have you always been this calm and positive, or is there a specific moment that kind of shaped you into who you are?
Well, I appreciate you saying that, man. Actually, I remember when I was a kid, I had a really bad temper, and I grew up in church, and nobody really saw that temper. And one day, my mom did something that made me really mad, and I was on the phone with a friend of mine, and I realized that my mom did this thing, so I just started screaming at her and just started letting her have it. And the whole time my friend is on the phone, just yelling in the phone, like, Bobby, 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 And when I realized he heard that side of me, I was mortified. And I thought, dude, I can't be this way. I got to be pissed all the time and be authentic to that, or be the other way. And so that was a moment when I realized that you can have these personas and these sort of superficial veneers that you hide under. And it really kind of creeped me out. My mom happens to be the most positive person I've ever met by default. So she really just sort of inspired me to pursue that and aspire to that. And I think positivity is sort of like taking a shower. You don't just do it once in your life and then you're good. You have to regularly sort of take a shower if you want to stay clean. I think positivity in that sense is a proactive thing that you sort of chase. So, it's something that I aspire to.
Yeah. I can relate to what you said, because I have ADHD and all that, and I, as a kid, I was just wild, just bouncing off the walls and all that. Have I changed since then? Well, I kind of hope so. I don't know, but I hope to reach your level one day. But,
that's nice of you to say so. I don't think in terms of levels, man. I think about it in terms of what we're faced with as people. And when you're on this conveyor belt of life as a kid, you're just sort of soaking it all in. You think everybody has the answer that's older than you. You're sort of just waiting for your moment. And then your moment comes and you're like, how come nothing's happening? How come I'm still at this job that doesn't pay anything? And then you add a decade or two onto that and you're not doing what you wanted to do. It's very easy to be negative and jaded. But, my path has been one of intense loss with people that have been close to me. So it's sort of jolted me into this space of where if you want to be positive, you have to dispel the myth of happiness, which is sort of this fleeting emotional thing. It's like you have a box of Nerds candy and, you're stoked, and then the sugar crash comes and you're all bummed out. That's not happiness. People are always sort of disrupting their lives because they say, I'm just not happy. And it's like a mic drop, and then they just let everything implode, Happiness is, I think I saw it was on a news broadcast. Denmark, they say they're the most content people because they never get their hopes up, so they're never disappointed. And I thought that was pretty funny. So happiness, I think, is this fleeting thing, like sadness. Contentment is really, I think, the most important thing that we should be aiming toward.
Yeah, because happiness is I don't know, because people always put their happiness into the wrong things. They think that once they get this, that it's gonna stay like that.
Yeah.
And how I get through my day is I have to take happiness in small doses. I know this is corny, but appreciate the little things.
No, it's not corny at all.
Yeah.
To me, that's the real muscle and being positive. Because it's easy to not even see those things. You heard, the saying, take it one day at a time. Years ago when I lost my family in a car accident, my mom and dad and my sister, I was sort of just blown away that, I was texting my mom, and then the next thing I could text her, but she wouldn't answer, And it was really hard for me to wrap my brain around the finality of that and the immediacy of that. And it was during that time I realized, like, man, happiness really is a choice. Like, you can either view life glass half full or glass half empty, and we don't have today. We have the moment.
Yeah.
That it took losing 3 people very close to me to come to that determination, to realize it is embracing the little things. So kudos to you for, having that insight, because it's the most obvious things in life that we completely just miss, and they're so simple we don't acknowledge them. That's too easy. It can't be that easy, But I find those small, simple truths are probably the hardest things to digest.
Yeah.
At least for me.
Yeah, because it's like easier said than done. And
Yeah.
it's so hard. At first, it's so hard to like put that in practice. But like once you like start doing it on a daily basis, it can get like somewhat easier. I think.
It sort of becomes like a habit
Yeah,
in some ways.
yeah. That's the important thing, is like to replace those negative habits with positive ones, with good ones.
Totally, man.
What are like some of your positive habits?
Well, I think all of us sort of fight this negative sort of self-talk. It's like a feedback loop. It exists in your head. It may be something negative that you experienced. Somebody said something to you, and it sort of just circulates back there, and you sort of grab onto it. Next thing you know, you're having an imaginary like lightsaber fight with this person, and of course you win. I remember working at this company in Seattle, and I walked over to a friend of mine who was sort of just staring off in the distance, and I was like, "Hey, dude, are you pretend fighting?" He's like, "Of course." And I just laughed. I'm like, "You do that too?" Sort of this joke that we all pretend fight. But I realized one morning getting up, like, if I had a negative thought, if I let it stay in my head and sort of just ran off with it, it would sort of set the tone for my day.
Yeah.
So that took practice, man, because it's not hard to find a negative thought. If somebody's gone out of their way maliciously to hurt you, or somebody said something that wasn't sort of like an honest mistake, they actually tried to wound you, those things can just hang out in your mind forever. And I think it's a daily thing. I think when you have that, and it could be from a bad sleep. You could already be sort of in a position to think negatively because you had a horrible sleep and you had a bad dream or something. You slept weird and your back's hurt. All that stuff could kind of accumulate. So for me, the habit is acknowledging the negativity and then just like shutting it down. I'm just not even going to think about it. And from a practical standpoint, I remember when I was in high school, I told my dad, I was like, "Dad, I just don't feel right. Something's wrong." It was very heavy to me. I thought it was like some sort of like identity crisis or something. And he was really funny. He goes, "Bub, how long did you sleep last night?" And I was like, maybe like 2 hours. He's like, "Have you had breakfast? Have you exercised?" Like, he just kind of went down this list, and I went, no. And it just sort of made me realize, like, yeah, we take ourselves way too seriously. Often it's just the practical approach that can sort of like fix these things. So for me, getting enough sleep, even though sleep deprivation is an incredible tool for creative pursuits, I found, but lack of sleep also leads to prediabetes and things like that.
Yeah.
And then getting up after good sleep and doing like high intensity exercise, just quick bouts of exercise every morning. Just, you don't have to do it every morning, but it's sort of routine. It's sort of habit. And that's how the day starts, and then you just sort of like go through the day, and I don't want to say not take everything serious, because, life is serious, but taking everything in stride, like sort of like a grain of salt,
Yeah.
Pareto's principle, the whole idea of like 20% of the effort, 80% of the result. It's this notion of working smarter, not necessarily harder. And I think you can do that in the way you just sort of approach your day and the way you manage your thoughts.
So, like, how do you maintain that positivity? Like, if you're having like a really like stressful day, like a day like that where you don't even want to get out of bed.
Well, I don't all the time. I mean, sometimes you have those days where it's like, this was one of those days.
Yeah.
I will say that, and this is important to know, that like when you think about yourself, you're fated to be disappointed. I mean, it's just going to happen. I found that putting myself in a situation where I think about others is a game changer. So having a son, for example, I don't have time to focus on me. I'm thinking about him. The moment I think about this thing that I'm thinking about, next thing you know, he's asking me for something or he needs something. It's a large benefit to teaching. I mean, I have people all the time asking me for help. I'm not thinking about myself. So if it's not your natural inclination to think about others, you can hack it and get a job or do something where you are constantly helping others. It's wonderful, man. It's that whole idea of it's better to give than to receive.
Yeah.
We all know that it is. The receiving is great because, oh man, I got this new awesome thing, but then you want the next awesome thing. But to give somebody something and to see that sort of transformation and you see that you actually made a difference, that's like priceless.
Yeah.
So if you engage in have a lifestyle that caters to that, and I'm fortunate that I'm in a job that lets me do that, it bolsters that sense. And so if you're thinking about yourself, you're always going to be sort of in an argument against this phantom notion of who you think you should be. And it's sort of informed by just your life. You never really sit there and construct this thing to badger you. It's just this thing that sort of develops in the background. And often if you were to articulate what that persona is, you'd find that you don't even like connect with it. So sometimes it helps to actually voice these things that we think we want to be. So for example, I wanted to be the next Jimi Hendrix. I should have looked in the mirror and knew that wasn't possible, but he was my guitar idol, and I tried relentlessly to be that. And then one day I go to this club in Seattle. It's called the 700 Club. And this guy, he was this huge guy, didn't look like a guitar player, Al Rowe, fantastic guitarist. He's there, maybe 5 people are in the audience. Tony Coleman, a B.B. King's drummer, was playing with them. And this guy mopped the floor with the guitar. I mean, the guy was incredible. He had this big cell phone on his belt. I'm like, this guy's going to be terrible, And he was so good, I couldn't play guitar for a month. And when I did, I sort of eked out this G chord and was like, I just winced in pain because I could feel how bad I was in comparison. So I laid that burden down. I decided that was a character I wanted to be. And Jimmy existed because Jimmy was Jimmy.
Yeah.
If I try to be Jimmy, it's just a cheap version of that. And I think in that lesson, I realized that we have to figure out what our voice is. That's our number one challenge. And then when we hear that voice, it's going to sound weird because it's not like anybody else's. So often our first inclination is to squelch that voice and try to do something else because it's embarrassing. It doesn't sound right. It's original, but it feels foreign. That's once you feel that, it's usually a good indicator of like, no, that's your voice. That's the voice you need to actually nurture and pursue because nobody has that voice except for you. And that's when you can contribute something of value. If Jimmy had tried to be Albert King or one of these other guitarists, he would have sounded like those guys, but he was himself, and he influenced other people that have tried to be him. And it's not until you go and figure out what you're supposed to do with that do you have your own sort of song to play. So
Well, damn, now I feel inspired.
Well, good, man. That'll be $5.30. You could transfer the Bitcoin or whatever, Doge. I don't know if that's valuable anymore.
Actually, speaking of your music, I listened to your newest album, "Mighty Was Your Light," and one of the tracks that stood out to me was "Los Angeles," and there's a lyric that goes, "Save me from this town." And how would you like describe your experience in LA? Like overall, like was it a positive or was it a negative experience, or just like something in between?
Well, that song really is, that lyric is more of a metaphor, because I find myself singing that, and it's not really representative of actual like location. It's
Okay.
often a state of mind or place. And when I wrote that, it was actually in Corpus Christi. And then when I went to LA, I realized that needs to be called Los Angeles, because I thought of that a lot, like how the idea behind that song is there's a game happening, and I'm old enough to know that now, but I'm not interested in playing it anymore. And so what do I do? Where do I go? Do I just sort of bury my head in the sand and wait for death? Am I just supposed to just be? LA was interesting because before I went there, I would joke with my students. They're like, "You're going to like the utopia, the end of the earth, the best place ever." And that's sort of the attitude I went there with. And I had a swagger when I walked in that town, man. I thought, oh man, here I am. And it immediately, like, my ego was decimated. It didn't take long. I wasn't viewed in the way that I thought I would be viewed. Nobody cared. I was what's that? It's that Bon Iver song, I'm Not Magnificent, that lyric. Everything I sort of like identified with, nobody really cared. So it was a joke. And I learned how it worked there in terms of the industry. It was a lot of random nepotism. It's not so much who you know, but when you know them. I met an editor just randomly in a bar, and I was sort of griping about how I couldn't get work, and I was trying to figure out what to do. And I was talking to this AE on a show, assistant editor, and he chimes up and he's like, sometimes I'm on the 405, I want to blow my brains out, but tonight I'm glad I'm in LA and I'm going to help you, man. And he did, and it was that easy. And so the work sort of just happened from there. But it wasn't because of the films I made. It wasn't because of my degrees. It was from meeting people and getting a sense that it's a lot more social than anything. In fact, a guy there told me, he's like, the magic formula for success in LA, producer there said, it's 95% how good of a hang you are, 3% luck, and 2% creative. And so all of that swirling around in my head left me with this idea that I love the weather, but I didn't connect with the industry in the way that I thought I would. I learned that lesson about laying down my burdens and sort of just destroying my idols like Jimi Hendrix. I realized that Jimmy was Jimmy and I needed to be me. And that was a hard pill to swallow. I'm in Burbank. I'm editing a TV show. I'm making more money than I've ever made in my life. And I'm completely dissatisfied. And it was while I was in LA working on a film, this actress who came up to me, she asked if I could give her some tips on using a mirrorless camera. And I did, and we talked for a little bit, and she walked away, and I thought, dude, I really enjoyed that. And she makes more money probably in a day than I do in a year. And I didn't do that for money, and it felt great. So it was in that moment I realized, hey, maybe teaching is something that I could do for free and feel rejuvenated by it and then get paid. Because in LA, my music, my films, all of that stuff is sort of made from my heart. After I showed her how to use that camera, I realized, like, man, I could do this for free. This is something that I like. And that's when I sort of had my epiphany there. If you are doing something that you love, it's because you love it. It's not because you're necessarily getting paid for it, And when I was in LA, I was editing and I was shooting, but I was not making things that I wanted to make. So even though I was so close to doing the thing that I wanted to do, I was even farther away from what I wanted to do in reality because I wasn't doing it in the way I wanted to do it. And so there sort of came the balm of truth where I realized, like, music, that's something that I'll play because it calls to me. Like, I've tried not to do it. Especially in LA, I didn't really do it. I tried not to. But it's there for you. It's sort of like a breeze that sort of takes your breath away unexpectedly when you walk outside. It's that little flash of sun on your cheek that makes you feel alive. You know, when you're doing something that you're meant to do, you will do it for free.
Yeah.
So if you can do a job that you will do for free, then what's that saying, like, turn your love into your vocation, never take a vacation kind of a deal? It doesn't drain you, and so you have something left over for your creative pursuits. So teaching, I'm fortunate, man. I'm so blessed because I'm able to spend my time trying to help. And I can do it from this position of, like, I don't know everything, and I know I don't know everything. And all I can do is hopefully maybe give you something that will help you. And at the end of the day, I have emotional energy to pick up the guitar and play. When I was in LA, I was trying so hard to connect with the material that I was putting out for TV and film or whatever, but I couldn't. So it was totally draining. I had nothing to give. So that was a hard pill to swallow, being in Burbank, being in a position as an editor only really a little over 2 years in, and I'm sitting alongside people that had been in the game for 10, 15 years. And I'm there because I saw the matrix. I saw how it worked in LA. It was like getting thrown into a washing machine on spin cycle, like, and then I figured out how it worked. And I had to leave because it wasn't right. And so coming to Springfield, it sort of just took me aback because when I screened my students' first films in my cinematography class, I felt that spark in me again. And I joked with them, but it wasn't a joke. I'm like, man, I can't believe I had to leave Los Angeles to come to Springfield, Missouri to get inspired. And I play those same two films in my class every semester, even though that was several years ago. And it almost makes me cry when I watch them because they're so sincere. It's perfect, you know, and it's the thing that I had before I went there. And I was trying to make something out of I was trying to force my way through.
Yeah.
Some people live in LA and they do their thing and they love it, and that's great. I think it just reiterates the fact that we're all totally different, you know. We shouldn't underestimate the nuance of what it means to be ourselves, you know, whether it's physical, spiritual, emotional, whatever. We're all unique in a way that can only connect with certain things. So
yeah. What kind of advice would you give your students who want to be, like, more positive, especially those who are working on, you know, projects and productions?
I would say just very practical advice. Like, most of the time I have students in my classroom, you can tell they haven't slept in I don't know how long, you know, they're just jacked up. My advice would be try to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Now, I understand, like, when you're 20 or whatever, you do feel invincible, and you start to feel it when you get older. I remember driving from Vegas to Seattle once straight. It was like 23-hour drive. So that was brutal. I laid down. I felt like my heart was just going to explode because I was just running on adrenaline. I would say, you know, take care of yourself. Try to get some sleep. Watch what you're putting in your body, exercise. You don't have to go to the gym. You can do like a quick high intensity exercise session where you're just doing concentric and eccentric, very slow moving push-ups, pull-ups, squats, that sort of thing. It has enormous benefit at the mitochondria level, with your body, immunity, all that stuff. It's wonderful. So it's like, again, that 20-80 rule where you're not investing an hour at the gym, you're just investing a little bit of time, you know. You don't need any equipment. That's how I go through my day. And from there, that's kind of a habit. So that's enough to tackle at first. And give yourself the benefit of the doubt. If you feel terrible, then it's okay to grieve. It's okay to... I think the most important thing about the discussion of positivity is that we're not saying that you should ignore what you feel. It's not a way of going, oh, I'm not going to acknowledge that. But we do have to be careful about what festers in our hearts and what's in our mind.
Because if it's just like, because it's not a good thing to tell someone who's like, dealing with grief, just, be positive.
Oh, it's horrible.
Because that's, I think, there's a term for toxic positivity.
Yeah.
So.
No, I think that's right. And so that's, empathy goes a long way. And when you feel something, then you can experience that pain with somebody else. If somebody comes to me and says, hey, I lost my brother, I can relate. I really can. I feel that. And
it's like a perception thing too, because, people always view like grief, I guess, as a negative thing, but it's really, you can view it as a good thing. It's a good thing because it's just like what you're,
for sure,
something natural that happens to you after losing someone close to you. So.
Yeah, and I think on the same note, like positivity doesn't necessarily have to be like, you'll be all right.
Yeah, it would like a cheery,
It can be just a gentle, sort of just acknowledgement, like, I know you're hurting. I'm sorry. If there's anything I can do for you, for what it's worth, I went through the same thing, and I'm telling you, it's going to be okay. That's positive too. Rob Jackson, professor I talked about, he called the human language nothing more than mere grunts and whistles. And I love that, because how many times have you tried to articulate what you're trying to say?
Exactly.
And you kind of fashion the words just so, and you get it out there. And of course, academics are notorious for this. It's always, it's very verbose most of the time when people are talking, but it never feels like you quite nail it, So a lot of times words can't really capture a lot of this stuff. It's more about action, It's more about what you do, the energy that somebody can feel from you. You can smile at me all day long and be just like searing hate through your eyes, and that's what I walk away from. That was a lesson I learned in LA. I'd go for a job interview and I had my sports jacket on, I had my films under my belt and all this stuff, and I could feel the energy shift in the room. They hated me. They wanted me out of there within seconds, and I couldn't figure it out. So the energy, the attitude that you carry about somebody, that is what matters, less so than how you frame it with a word or whatever. But take everything I say with a grain of salt. It took me like 2 decades to finish my degree. I was in a Christian rock band with a fake Doc Martens and had a Charlie Brown shirt and hair down to my middle of my back and could barely play guitar.
I mean, life is a journey, right? And like,
thanks for passing over that, by the way.
And like, it's interesting too because you mentioned earlier that we're not defined by like how we look and all that. And it made me realize that like no matter like how much you like evolve as a person, like you still have those bits and pieces of your past, in you.
Yeah, totally.
So. And
I used to get really jaded about that. And as I get older, I recognize things that my dad did. Like my dad would he would say things and enunciate in a way that I'm starting to. And then when my son was born, I noticed him doing things that I've always thought were just me. And now he's doing them. And I thought, man, we beat ourselves up from an early age because, I'm thinking those are things I didn't like about myself. But now I'm seeing he's doing them. I didn't teach him because he's just born, Yeah. So, that as you get older, you start to sort of embrace those quirks and those weird things, and I don't know, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with not being magnificent. I'm fine with not being perfect. I'm fine with not being Jimi Hendrix. If reincarnation exists, maybe I can be the next. Well, I want to be the drummer for that band Deerhoof. That guy, he's amazing. But no, you're right. We do sort of carry it along with this.
Yeah.
we're like a mosaic, you know. By the end of this life, we're just this tapestry of experiences.
And it's still a good thing because, you know, even though if you've like made mistakes like in the past and all that, and that, you know, even though that follows like with you, when you're like evolving, you can look back at that as a good thing, you know.
Yeah.
So it's just like, well, this is where I was in life, and like now, like I'm someone who has like learned so much along the way.
Oh man, thank goodness for that. I mean,
Yeah.
I remember being, you know, in my town of Post, Texas, performing Christian rap with this strobe light behind me, wearing like a neon sweater. I weigh like 30 pounds because I live on a diet of like Tulsips, these like 32-ounce Cokes. You know, I'm sitting there like Christian rapping for all the rednecks driving around the square. They're driving in their trucks like, what the hell, you know? Total disconnect, you know? I need to work on my messaging for my audience. Yeah, so I look back at that time and I just like cringe, you know. But I say that I cringed at one point, but not anymore because it's part of the journey, you know. I understand where I was coming from and the motive behind it, but just had no context. What was that George Harrison lyric? The farther one travels, the less one really knows. Yeah. That to me, that sums it up, you know. If you ever want a lesson in like how to think about life, just visit George Harrison's music, you know. He'll tell you all the stuff that it's kind of bugging you on the inside that you can't articulate, you know. Oh yeah, you know. So, and he was a Beatle.
Yeah. I should start like getting back into Beatles music because lately I've been listening to like a lot of like Tame Impala, which is probably like my favorite like music thing ever.
Yeah.
Because it's like the Beatles mixed with like 70s psychedelic rock. You
Yeah,
know?
man.
It's
My wife
a
loves
great
Tame Impala.
experience.
I dig that guy's approach, man. It's just he just has a room full of gear, like this room here, and just records, you know, off the cuff, and then sends it to some guy to mix and whatnot. And yeah, I dig his style.
Yeah. I know that I'm gonna be okay every day, like when I listen to some Tame Impala. So,
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah.
Listening to music is a bit I mean, it sort of takes you to another place.
Yeah.
And I think that may be why I shut myself off from it for a while, because it was making me I had to acknowledge certain things I didn't want to. You know, you meet these people, they sort of go through life with blinders on, and there's this hard exterior, and they're just cold, you know. That's all of us. All of us can be that. We are all capable of doing horrible things and good things. And so I think that's why it's important to just stay honest with what you're feeling in your heart, and then take it from there.
So before we end the episode, I want to ask you two last questions that I ask everyone. What is something that has brought you immense joy today?
Today?
Yeah.
On this day, it would just be hanging out with my son. I love that boy. You know, he gives me hugs. We have our breakfast routine. He watches this like Super Mario Brothers thing that he's into on his iPad, and I give him his breakfast, and he's sitting there eating, and all interactions with him. Basically, when I was in LA, I had this moment where I took him to the park. I wasn't getting any work. I laid down this blanket, down and put these little yogurt chips on there, and he was like 2-ish. And he looked at me and smiled. And there's a lyric in one of my songs where I vanished that day. A breeze of sunshine smiled through him. And I realized that my purpose in life was to love, be kind, but it was to be his papa. That was it. Now my identity is papa. It's not any of this other stuff I wanted. So my world revolves around that guy. So today, all of my interactions with him has been awesome. Even though that sometimes means he kicks me in the groin at night, he'll just like kick me in the back, and I'm on a heating pad for the week. It's all good.
And then, what is something that you need to work on?
Something I need to work on. Well, I think, well, this is hard to answer because oftentimes the things I need to work on are things that I'm not aware that they needed work. So I don't know if everybody's that way, but my problems generally are not problems I see until they're problems that I'm sort of in the back end of solving. I would say specifically it's the same problem that I've always had, and that is taking stock of my thoughts, being mindful of what's coming in, and partitioning them in the places that they need to be. And so for me, for an example, are we at the end of the world right now? It sure feels like it, with all that's going on. And I worry a great deal about my son. I'm not worried about myself. I'm worried about my son. I'm worried about this world and what's happening in Australia right now, what world is he growing into? And this comes back to a belief in God. I felt like I was going to be crushed by this worry at one point. And I finally just conceded, like, do you believe or do you not believe? It's sort of a piss or get off the pot moment. And I realized I didn't want to believe because it was convenient and easy. I wanted to believe because I want to believe. And I finally went, I'm 47. I need to just plant a flag. And I need to do it based on what I feel in here, my gut. I believe, and I don't know why. I don't even have the answers, but I believe. And so with that belief comes this sort of offer of trust. Do you trust your creator to take care of it? Is your son going to be okay? And I have to go, yes, he's going to be okay. And there's a funny little statement that somebody once said, none of us are going to make it out of here alive, but none of it's fatal, So for me, it's trust. It's trusting God. That would be something that I struggle with because I want to take care of things. And again, I want to reiterate, I never used language like this for the longest time because I didn't want to alienate people. I grew up as somebody that was always trying to convert, So I'd always sort of hem-haw around it and sort of skirt certain language. But I don't believe that my strength comes from myself. I don't believe that positivity innately comes from me. I think I have to look for an example for help. I would say every day refreshes. You get up, you just sort of take care of your body that's just wired with all kinds of chemicals to send you one way or the other. And, if you pigged out on some just, my friend calls it a dirty snack the night before, you're going to feel horrible that morning. So remember that. Give yourself the benefit of the doubt. Like, I feel crappy because I ate that thing, that meat-filled donut thing or whatever, I got for $1. That was free when I got the tank of gas. And then just go from there.
Yeah. Man. We were so, insightful and just full of wisdom, aren't you?
Well, let me just give you my credit card. How much do I owe you for that? I had to pay to be on this podcast.
Well, Bobby, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, yeah, man. Thank you.
I really appreciate it. And everyone, make sure to check out Bobby's new album, Mighty Was Your Light. You can check it out at bobbytlewis.com.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for watching and listening. I hope you all have a very beautiful day. And make sure to take care of yourselves, because if you don't, I will be sad.
And I'll be sad too.
Yeah. Peace.